Recording in progress.
Welcome back, everyone. This is our restorative mobility class. This is week 9. This is our 18th session of this class. We have one more week to go. Next week is our final week. And yeah, after that we have 2-week break, and then we start August 17th. So if you have to be re-enrolled, all of that has been taken care of. If you don't see the classes ready for you on your end by now, then you probably need to enroll yourself. I may have missed you or you didn't communicate with me, but yeah, there's still time to re-enroll into that. Tomorrow and Saturday we will be meeting at 8 o'clock and at 9 o'clock. So usually our 10 o'clock class goes at 10, but with the weather and some availability in the schedule, we're moving it to 8 for these last 2 weeks. Okay, so let's just go ahead and begin with some facial stretches. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, open our mouth as wide as we can. Tilt your head upwards as you have that mouth open. Then bring your chin towards your nose, feeling that nice stretch down your neck. Okay, so let's do about 8 of those. Let's go ahead and begin. Go ahead. Do one more. Alright, very good. Just soft palpations in my earlobes, down my chins. Does anyone have access to a sauna pretty readily? Maybe even have one at home? I bring that up because I've also been reading a lot on sauna and how that could help you with your increase in red blood blood plasma. So that's the fluid that moves your blood, your red blood cells throughout your system. So again, that's what I'm trying to do. Let's use the side of our eyes down our cheeks, just vertically down. With this whole heat training that I've been trying, but a sauna could do the same thing. Instead of just running in the heat, you could just hang out in the sauna. Okay. In case you have access to a sauna, been seeing good results with after a workout or after a walk, as your body's trying to cool off, the sauna will benefit that. But before you get ahead of yourself, check in with your doctors for that, because I know it's been mentioned, folks with heart conditions or high blood pressure, sometimes we want to double check before we start something like that. All right, let's go ahead and inhale through our nose. Make a small little windpipe with your lips and exhale. Repeat. Leave all of it out. Last one. Very good. Let's puff up our cheeks with air and move that air bubble left to right. Then relax. Okay, when you're ready, let's puff them up again, but now that air bubble up and down your lips. Okay, so, nope. And relax. Alright, very good. We'll start with our neck stretches now. So just gently left, right, these crickets are still in my garage. I can't get them out. So again, gentle, no sudden movements. Up and down.
I finally got the donation done.
Oh, thank you, Kathleen. I'll double check. I usually get an email, but I appreciate you. Yeah, I'm really trying to encourage these kids, and unfortunately, they don't get motivated to reach out to folks until, I gotta let them know, hey, just so you guys know, these funds is what funds our travels for the season. So I told them, based on what we have right now, we're trying to go to Fresno and then also Monterey Bay. I was like, we might just go to Fresno because the Monterey Bay trip, I don't think we're gonna have funds for it. Let's do our next circles. And when I said that, their eyes opened up. Like, okay, coach, I'm gonna reach out now. I'm like, yeah, I'm just not. I wish the department provided funds for travel, but at this level, junior college is pretty affordable, and but the department's not like throwing money at the team. So I'm like, traveling further and staying overnight, that's more of a luxury. And if you guys want to do that, let's switch. I was like, we need support, and we need you guys to help out and reach out. And sometimes I have some folks that are just like, oh, I don't want to fundraise. Let's look left. Let's go ahead and sit on our left hand. Bring that right hand over. Every other year, I have someone who's just like, can I just pay for everything? My dues, and so I don't have to fundraise. I'm like, yeah, but I don't want you to. Like, if you have family or loved ones, or maybe an old like a high school coach or someone that has the means to support, I was like, you could always ask, but to each their own sometimes.
And that was my experience when I was in college. There was no way I was going to ask family or friends. It was too embarrassing for me.
Yeah.
But my roommate taught me something. She said it doesn't hurt to ask. And so I then, challenged myself, sent out letters to family and friends. Yeah. And I was overwhelmed by the love,
yeah,
that I got. It was amazing. It made me feel so special.
Right. No, even me personally, like this is more for them, but I know like my network of friends and family and just people that I know has grown, and it's probably larger. Let's bring those arms back and then elbows down. It's a little bit bigger than they are, and I understand they're younger, and I've just networked with more folks, but it's sometimes I do like a blast of the link, or just folks that I keep in contact with, and I get it, like it's like people just, let's reach up towards the ceiling and lean right, and I get it. Some folks they're just not accustomed to to doing it, or whatever their personal reasons are, it's okay. And then, but there's some folks that look forward to it, and I have one of my buddies. He's single. He's a teacher right now. He chose he decided to not teach summer school, so he's just traveling. And I share the link, and every year he usually asks me what student needs a little bit more assistance, and can you share me that student's link or something. And this year, like he got the email because he's helped out in the past. Let's go ahead and look to the left and press. And I saw that he donated, and I'm like, hey dude, thank you. He's like, Oh well, yeah, man. I always help out. I just did a race in Mexico City. I just got back from Vegas. I actually just landed in Colorado. He's living it up right now. Let's go, right? And he's like, yeah, the least I could do right now is it's help someone out. I was like, no, I appreciate you, but and he's like, yeah, when I go back home, I'm gonna I have to start looking for property to buy, and I'm just like, oh, okay, that's cool. But yeah, he's always like ready to help out, and but he at the same time, he, like I said, he's a teacher, so he's I think he teaches second grade. Um, let's go ahead and we did our neck stretches. Let's do our snow angels. So like I was talking about wish lists earlier in class. He has a wish list for his classroom. So he'll post that on his social media, and it could be anywhere from like glue sticks, all the way to like some globes, maybe some material for his classroom. And yeah, I mean it's I just I think it's wild even for that age group that teachers don't get the supplies that I felt like when I was in elementary school we had a tons of supplies, for arts and crafts and everything. And now it shocked me the first few years when I saw friends that I have that are teachers asking for funds or for support for their classrooms. And I was like, oh shoot, like I didn't know like that's where we were at with classroom supplies too, which is kind of sad. So let's bring that right arm across. Yeah, because I want to say that I hope that most teachers, their heart is in the right place, and it's not just like about, making income, but also like they want to like that they're passionate about their job and that they love it, and but if there's a teacher that's passive and it's nonchalant about teaching, and maybe they're just see it as like any other job, yeah, there's gonna be some kids out there that don't benefit from creativity in the classroom or stuff like that. So I hope my kids don't go through stuff like that, but I'm sure it's a reality some places.
Well, I can't see anyone going into teaching for the money. There's no way.
I agree. Yeah. That's what I tell high school coaches. A lot of relatives and family ask me, "Hey, why don't you teach at the high school level? It looks like there's more opportunities because there's a lot more high schools and colleges." I was like, those high school coaches have a big heart. I was like, that's all I'm gonna say. They let's bring that right elbow up and drop that forearm. I remember my high school coach. He broke down his income from coaching, and you get a stipend, and the stipend doesn't change depending on how little or how much you work. It's like a salary for the season. And I think he said one of his that usually it was somewhere like between 34 and 71 cents an hour what he was making back in like 2002 2003 left elbow. But in 2005 we had a really good team, so he said he spent more time just working at practice or outside of practice for the team. And I think he said it was somewhere like silly, like between 11 to like 17 cents an hour. And I was like, no, I'm sure he's just messing. And no, and of course, when I'm looking at stipends or ask some of my alumni that are coaches, and I ask them, hey, like, if you don't mind me asking, how much are they giving you? And then I'm like, oh shoot, yeah, my my coach wasn't lying. It's one of those things. Elbows here and wide. So yeah, hopefully I know teachers, I think they do have like a pretty good like retirement, or it's not pension anymore, right? It's like maybe their retirement might be okay. I'm not sure. I can't confirm.
Yes, it'll help pay the bills, but there's no extra.
Yeah. I think we were talking, Kathleen, on the walk on last time about the Roth IRA, and on my Fidelity account, it came out and it said Roth IRA for kids, and I was like, what? Like, I'm pretty sure you need a W-2 form for that. That's gonna do trunk rotation, so grab a hold of your seat in the backrest and turn gently to the right. So of course, like, I looked into it, I'm like, is there a way I could get my kids a Roth IRA? And I clicked on it, and like right away it tells you, oh, if you have a young adult or a 16 or 17-year-old that's babysitting or making money on the side, you could start them a Roth IRA. And I was like, well, yeah, like in that way, but the way they were promoting it, they were just promoting it like if it was like a like a college fund, but that burst my bubble real quick. I was like, man, shoot, if I could get Julian a Roth IRA right now, I was like, he's gonna be enjoying his 60s. Grab it, hold here, other side. Very good. Let's do our cat scratching pose. So sit towards the front of the chair. Separate your feet. Reach up. And reach. Back. Two. Three. 4. 5. 3 more. 6. 7. And 8. Awesome. Very good. Whew. Arms here, just tapping our opposite shoulders. Yeah, we were actually, my assistant coach and I were trying to plan out our running routes for our camp in Mammoth today. And yeah, I was just like, well, August 17th is the first day of fall class, so I gotta be back in the cabin by 9 a.m. I was like, so we gotta plan that one out a little bit better. And then on Tuesday and Thursday, and then we meet on Wednesday again, but I think that Wednesday I may have to post a recording because I'm trying to take the team to go see Devil's Postpile or Rainbow Falls. Let's flip those hands and then up and down. So I may have to do recordings, so we could do that on Wednesday of that week. And then Tuesday and Thursday of that week I have Irvine at 9 a.m. So yeah, I may have to get creative with camp this year, but yeah, there's some years where the kids, I get a group of kids that are very in tune with their nature side, and they want to go see the ancient bristlecone trees, which are the oldest trees in the world. Let's go ahead, elbows at your side, and lift them up. And then I have some groups some years that they could care less about seeing something amazing like that. And it really bothers me. I'm like, oh, you don't understand. Like, this might interest you, and in like 10 years from now, maybe 5 years, maybe 20 or 30 years, and it's such a cool place just in the world. You get to see trees that are 4,000 years old, 3,000 years old, And they're just like, whatever, it's a tree that looks dead. And I'm just like, ah. So I got asked the group this year what they want to do. I'm making sure Julian's into stuff like that. Like whenever I see something that's like super interesting to me, but it could be like mildly interesting for a kid, I try to make it super exciting so he gets like, you know, like, oh my gosh, mom, like I just saw like the coolest pine cone or something. I was doing stuff like that with him at Lake Tahoe. So let's go ahead, sit towards the front of the chair. Right leg, bring it out. Put your hand there. We have to start planning our fall walk for the fall term pretty soon. And switch. Whew. Reset. Right ankle on that left knee. Right ankle on left knee. Gentle push down on that knee. Bring our knee up. This is a random question, but is anyone in here considering like moving to a different state or a different country, like in the coming years or at some point? I was thinking about this during my run today. Or is everyone pretty set here? That stretch here.
Funny, when you look at the weather around the country,
Switch.
I think I'm happy here.
Yeah. Who was in the East Coast? Was it Ella? You were just saying you just escaped the weather? Yeah, I was thinking. Oh.
Long story.
Weather in the class. Previous class.
Gentle push down. I know one of my good friends lives in Missouri, and we were talking a lot during the World Cups because he was able to go to like 3 or 4 different games out there. So, you know, we're talking and he's like, "Hey, let me call you back. The sirens just went on." I'm like, "What?" And then he hung up on me and I texted him. I'm like, "Wait, what'd you say? I didn't hear that last part." He's like, "Tornado warning, sirens are on. I'll call you back in like 2 hours." I'm like, "Oh, okay, be careful." I'm just like, "Oh man." So. Alright, let's go ahead and sit towards the front of the chair, recline. Bring that leg up and extend that lower leg. 2 more. Let's switch. Bring that leg up. Wayne, Teresa, you think you'll ever move to up north by Arcata?
My roots are here.
Oh, you're with here, yeah.
I'm going to Australia.
Australia?
Yeah, like Alexander.
Okay. There you go. Your Arcata up there, it's beautiful, but yeah, I don't know how long I could be over there, full time. That'd be. Oh no, it's really pretty up there though. Let's bring that leg up, elevate the leg, and let's swing it out and then back. We had some neighbors, actually 2 neighbors, neighbors across the way. They moved to like southeast state of Washington, and then some neighbors down the block are moving to somewhere in Washington, but that's where my sister's at. And yeah, I think that's a really pretty area. I think I could live at a place like that. I've always liked the rain, and so let's switch. Oregon's really pretty too. Alright. Go ahead and do toe raises. I feel like this is the part of the class where I keep backing up my chair, or eventually I'm gonna hit the garage door behind me. So just raise your toes up and down. So recently, my wife, she's been doing dishes with Spam quite a bit, and it's been a hit here at the house. I remember growing up, I was like, what is that mystery meat? And elevate the right ankle, do some ABCs. But she's been making like Spam musubis, and then like Spam fried rice. And yeah, the kids gobble it up, I gobble it up, and my wife doesn't mind because she's like really efficient at making it. She has her whole system down, so it doesn't take her too long to make that stuff. So yeah, so I think that we also found, when I was tracking my macros, we found turkey Spam. We might be using that. But then I'm like seeing stuff online, and been seeing these like recipes with like tuna and like sardines. So I don't know, I might have to get back on my kitchen game. I used to cook a lot more, but I've been moved out to watching the kids while the cooking's going on. Let's switch. Alright, feet are flat. Okay, and pull your toes towards your heel. Start thinking about where your golf ball or your tennis ball is, because we will be using those in the next couple of minutes. So try to remember where that's at so we could roll out our arches. Alright, feet are flat, and then now let's pull back. So pull those arches or that metatarsal area towards your heel. Alright. And then let's go look for that golf ball, tennis ball. I have a rugby ball too. I'm gonna go with the tennis ball. No, I'm gonna go with the golf ball right now. So go ahead and look for that item. Give you a minute to look for it. Alright. Once we have our ball there, let's just go ahead and push down and roll back and forth. Find a spot that's a little tender. Just kind of roll around it. Alright, let's find another side opposite from it. Just keep on rolling. Alright, let's go to the other foot. Thanks, Kathleen. I just got that email. Let's go back and forth.
It's called Pay It Forward.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate it. We try, sometimes we have extra gear for the kids, so we try to motivate them, like, hey, whoever fundraises the most gets this jacket or this backpack. So I handed out a shirt the other day to one of the kids that's been really active on it. Yeah, because I was like, it's not about like the fundraising. I was like, sometimes I have some kids that upload 20 emails and they might get $5. And I was like, hey, you tried. You put 20 emails out there. It went to 20 people. And find that spot that's tender. I was like, you still, you did the effort. So find that spot. I'm just glad my feet are feeling better. Last week my feet were like completely flat. And everything was tender for them. So, alright. And lastly, we're gonna do our standing shoulder stretches. Alright. Carmen, when are you going back to Puerto Rico? Puerto Rico.
Not sure, but most likely next year at the beginning, like in April,
Oh, okay.
when the best weather is.
If you ever, how's the weather in December?
December is good, but I like to stay here with all the nice things, and it's nicer to go around and look at the Christmas trees and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. I asked because that's usually the month I could travel. So I was gonna say let's go in December some year. You could show me around. Up and down.
I want to go to Puerto Rico.
I know, right? Let's go. Carmen says she has 3 Airbnbs out there. Each one has a pool.
Yeah.
She says she'll cook for us every morning.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, let's
Go to parrandas. Do you know what parrandas are?
Parranda sounds like a party.
Yes, it's you go from house to house, and everywhere you go, the people that are in the house join you, and you start building up a big group.
Ooh.
You're chanting and having fun, and then the last house is the one that has to cook for everybody.
I think we should have a parranda here and finish at your house.
Yeah.
That sounds cool. Yeah, I've heard
You're
of.
welcome, but I don't cook. You have to
Okay.
bring things.
No,
Good luck.
I've heard of that word parranda a lot.
I don't cook either, Carmen.
Oh yes, I have to bring it. Yeah.
Let's go 30 degrees forward. Yeah, I've heard of the word parranda before, and I always thought it was just like a party, but that sounds a lot cooler the way you just described it. So
Well,
it's
it's
like,
more
like a posada.
but everybody enjoys it. You know.
yeah, that's cool.
And then in the old San Juan, it's a huge parranda.
60.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. So the person there they have to like. Damn, they have to treat a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, it's awesome when communities get down like that. Straightforward. And towards the back. Alright, right side. So push with your left, guide with the right. Thirty degrees forward. $60. A lot of crackling on my shoulders. 90. Straight in front of you. And towards the back. Alright, let's go behind the back. And then up and down. And then let's lift from here, lift up. Okay. Alright, folks. That should do it for today. Oof. Thank you again, everyone, to show up. Reminder, tomorrow we will meet at 8